casually not so casual 7-point Sunday in October 9th, 2022. It is NFL Week 5. It is Circa Million 2022. The show, it is Sharky Waters Nation. Now let's go ride the wave, get out of the water. Top plays dropping, top high time analysis. It is the Shark, it is the Gun, and it is Oddfellow. Picks. What's going on this beautiful October Sunday morning, my brother?
We are coming back from a college football where we made some profit, 3.7 units altogether. We'll take the profit and move forward, but I am ready to talk nothing but Sunday NFL football, and I'm feeling pretty good. Oddfellow, how you feeling, buddy?
Feeling great. We're battling in the contest. I think we finished Q1, the official 4 weeks in the book, at 16-4 on the available 20-game slate in the Circa Millions contest. That's me, that's Shark, that's Fusini, that's the old man. So we're having fun. So we got some of those sprinkled in with some officials today. We're on to week 5. We're on to Q2. And I'm excited. If you guys see me drop off the screen, it is not technical difficulties. Got some dad bod responsibilities, but these guys will take you home. Don't sweat it.
Absolutely. As we let people file in the door, we know people are watching. Aaron Rodgers and company overseas at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Best of luck with your wagers there. Not waiting around. We are going straight to Foxborough, Massachusetts, Gillette Stadium. Guns picks yesterday. 3-unit banger, Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. Maybe not coincidentally. Bayley Zappi, I should say. Bailey, who cares? Playing for the Patriots today. Patriots come home. A tough travel, tough sequence of games coming into this game. But against the Lions on a specific matchup of a loss to Seattle. Guns picks, the hat, the fandom, the wall, the lifestyle. Talk to me. What's going on here?
Listen, going back to the well, I know I didn't take them last week, but we're going Patriots once again. Listen, playing at home, -3 on the spot, back-to-back losses, including a loss to Green Bay last week in dramatic fashion, losing in overtime, also losing their backup quarterback in the process. But we'll get to him in just a second. Now you got New England 1-3 for the season, but they played evenly as far as net yardage is concerned against their opponents. They played Miami, Pitt, Baltimore, and Green Bay. -6 net yard average for the season, winning the net yards battle in 2 out of 4 games. Key point here. Now look at Detroit coming into this game. They're 1-3 straight up off back-to-back losses, losing 48-45 to an abysmal Seattle team, in my opinion, giving up 555 yards of total offense, 320 passing, and a 7.1 yards per carry on the ground. Now let's talk about my man, my guy, the pride of Houston Baptist and Western Kentucky. Bailey Zappi is going to be starting today for New England. If you actually looked at his stats, he wasn't too bad in jumping into the position on the fly. 10 for 15, 99 yards, 1 touchdown, replacing Hoyer. Now you have a Detroit team that is banged up on the offensive side with the running back and the wide receiver positions. And then you have the Detroit defense giving up 440 yards of total offense to their opponents this season, 35 points per game. And then you actually look at New England on the other side with their defense, 400. They only give up 347 yards of total offense, 19 points a game. So what I think you're going to see New England scoring, and you're going to see Detroit not be able to perform and get the points to stay up with New England in the situation. New England is bend, not break. And Detroit's defense is break. So I'm going to be rolling with the New England Patriots -3 as the play.
Anthony Latino, welcome to the show. Sunday morning, alignment, I believe.
It is. I like this spot. I like what the defense has done all year for New England to keep them in games. And you're from an offensive standpoint, they haven't gotten going, but you're going up against a Detroit Lions defense that has not been able to stop anyone. I got a slight lean to the over here, but full alignment with Guns because I think Belichick and this squad gets a little rejuvenated and gets it going today.
Yeah, I'll jump off this, and I apologize for the internet connection. We're trying to figure it out here. It's 2022. We're blessed to be here, but unfortunately, internet sometimes cuts in and out. My first play, New England -3. I'm going to jump off what Guns said. A lot going on here, but I think the first thing you really need to look at is the New England schedule. This is a 1-3 team, but who have they lost to? They've lost in Miami, which is a spot that Tom Brady could not even win in, let alone Mac Jones pre-injury. Then they come in with back-to-back losses, a home loss against Baltimore. I think most sharp action was on Baltimore that particular day. Baltimore's a classy team, and we will, of course, discuss that a little later on in the broadcast. But now you come home off a road cover in overtime against the Packers. It probably could have been a tie. Obviously, the Packers walked it off very late in the game. This is not a bad 1-3 football team. This is a 1-3 football team that has lost to 3 playoff teams. And now they come home, only their second home game of the year, and they do catch the lives, as Gunn mentioned, that has an incredibly young defense. There's a lot of talent on defense. And I give a shout out to my man Aaron Glenn. I remember watching him play for the Jets in the 90s. But he's going to do a good job with the unit, but probably not this year. A lot of growing pains with a young unit. And the Patriots, in my opinion, are going to put a game plan today on the field similar to what they did last year at Buffalo. And that sounds a little weird, but when the Patriots went on the road to Buffalo in the regular season, a game that they won 14-10, at that point in time, they were completely outmanned and outclassed by Buffalo, which of course was showcased later on by a 47-17 blowout in the playoffs by Buffalo. But what Bill Belichick did that day, he just pounded the run. You would have thought this was 1953. Mac Jones had 6 to 10 attempts in the passing game the whole game, and he's just demolished the line of scrimmage and out-physical a young unit and try to suck their soul out today. I expect a lower scoring game than people think for the sole reason that I think the Patriots are really going to pound and pound and pound the run. We're on it officially, New England, to get their second win of the year, -3. Guns picks. Heinz Field is no longer here. We talked about this going back 2 weeks ago. Acrisure Stadium, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm on the other side of the state, but we're going north, and we're going to Buffalo. I lost my train of thought there. I apologize, guys. We're taking an over 47 or 45. Discussed this earlier. I will go into detail. Guns picks, alignment, I believe.
Yeah, I saw it at 45. I got it at 45 last night. That line should be available here. Look at Buffalo right now. Back-to-back road games versus Miami and Baltimore in variated weather conditions. One being at hot, smeltering heat in Miami, and then also you got them in the cold, rainy, dreary weather last week versus Baltimore in a big win. Now look at Pittsburgh coming off 3 straight losses. They lost to the New York Jets 24-20 last week, but it also resulted in the replacement of the captain, Mitch Trubisky, for the highly touted draft pick, Kenny Pickett. Now, when you actually looked at Kenny Pickett, when he actually went into the game, you saw the pace kind of quicken up. You saw the offense kind of moving. You saw a quarterback that was willing to take a few more risks, passing the ball down the field. He was 10 for 13, 76.9% completion rate, and a 9.2 yards per attempt. He did have 3 picks, but if you actually break down the picks, one was a Hail Mary. One was probably a bad pass in my opinion, in double coverage. And then the other one was a tip ball that ended up getting picked. Now you got to look at Buffalo. They're coming off 2 straight under games, 50-55. The total here sitting at 45 at home. Now, this is a revenge spot for Buffalo. If you remember last year, Pitt came into Buffalo and beat them 23-16 early in the season. It might have been week 1, week 2, and they beat. So there's a little bit of a factor in that regard. But you know who was playing in that game was TJ Watt. Now look at what the defense for Pittsburgh has done without TJ Watt. They've only had 3 sacks in his absence since getting 7 sacks in the first game versus the Bengals. So what I think is you're going to have here, the Buffalo Bills coming off back-to-back road games in variated conditions, getting back to the comfortability of their home stadium. They put up 41 points in their first home game of the season on Monday Night Football versus Tennessee. And I think when you have Pickett in there, he could go tit for tat with you, and he's going to get his too. I think this offense for both sides of the ball are going to be able to move, and you're going to see points. So I like the over in this one, 45.
Yeah, and jumping off that, I was discussing this off the record early in the week. And, Guns mentioned this last year. In week 1 last year, it seems like forever ago, Ben Roethlisberger was still the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They came on the road up to Orchard Park, and it was a dud game. 23-16, 39 points. The Buffalo Bills didn't even really get their wind until the fourth quarter of that game. Not entirely sure what was going on there. But since then, Buffalo is averaging 30.9 points per game at home themselves alone. And you look at what Pittsburgh is doing here. Kenny Pickett obviously only won football last week. An immediate jolt to the offense, an immediate scheme change and 28 second half points, 21 in the fourth quarter alone. Guns mentioned some turnovers. This guy's a young guy. He's a local product. Obviously went to college at Pitt. He's a hell of an athlete. Their first overall pick in the draft this year. This is the future of the franchise, and they're going to play a totally different style of football than what you've seen in limited action with Mitchell Trubisky this year. Of course, the final point, Buffalo does come home here off 2 lackluster road efforts scoring the football. Very situational stuff. Down in Miami, 500-plus yards, just could not get in the end zone in the heat. And then last week, in the middle of the periphery of Hurricane Ian in Baltimore, only 23 points, came out horribly. It was pouring rain. They couldn't control anything. We're taking the over here with authority. I think this correlates back to how Buffalo played some non-playoff teams early last season, 43-21 against Washington and a couple others. Speaking of totals, we're going to jump to the late cards. Anthony's got a bunch of stuff going on here. Carolina Panthers at 4:05 p.m. on the East Coast. We're not entirely sure why this game is at 4:05. Obviously, last week as well against Arizona, the same thing. I had mentioned earlier, I don't know if the league's trying to help these teams coming from the West Coast traveling east, give them a better body time, which is slightly corrupt to a certain degree. That's kind of the whole point of traveling east. The East gets an advantage. Who knows what's going on with the league? But, Anthony, we're centered here on a side and a total. San Francisco traveling on the road off a huge divisional win, an under. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we'll slice this thing 3 different ways, get you 3 quick picks. The 405, like you said, hopefully does help the Niners. The league has been clustering unders. Now, we're staying there, but I think that's a good narrative to what these guys were just talking about with that Buffalo pick later on. That's why I'm trending lightly on a lot of these totals. I do love the under here, and that's at 39.5. I also love San Francisco -6.5, and the Carolina team total under 16.5 for a little sprinkle there. That's juiced to like -115 in most spots you can find it, but that's still above 2 touchdowns in a good spot. Now, why? The one con, the one danger, one counter narrative here, which we always like to consider all points, is Carolina is 1-3 against the spread. So maybe they do get a little bit of regression at some point, but I think right now you got a team that has too much turmoil going on, maybe it's on the hot seat, maybe a quarterback that might find his way out of starting positions moving forward in Baker Mayfield. But I love what San Francisco is doing on all sides of the ball. So besides the first half in the opening game where they gave up 19 points, in the second half of that Bears game, 13 of those 19, which were on 2 broken backyard-looking Justin Fields-like plays in the rain. Good for Justin Fields, good for the Bears to get an upset W there, right? But throw it out because in the other 14 out of 16 quarters, this team has only given up 28 points in 14 quarters, right? So that's their games in the first half of the Bears game when they shut out the Bears. So the defense is living up, and 7 of those were on a blocked punt, right? So that's a little bit more special teams than defense. But this defense is kind of hitting on all cylinders. They're first in DVOA defensively against a Carolina team that's 31st offensively here and can't get out of their own way with Baker Mayfield sitting at a QBR of 15.1, last among eligible quarterbacks. This man's got Sam Darnold breathing down his neck. Maybe that's a back against the wall thing, but I think it's just too much depth, too much talent here for San Francisco. And at a 6.5 on this type of line with that type of defense, they don't need to go crazy with Jimmy G. They don't need to get it all done, right? They just need to maintain, let that defense play. So I think you're going to get a heavy run game. I love the way the game script unfolds here, and I think all 3 of those things then hit because of that. So San Francisco -6.5, the under 38 or 39.5. I got to check that. And then the Carolina team total under 16.5. So good spots overall at that 405 slot.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you go through, obviously, this calendar for San Francisco, I mentioned this last week. I think San Francisco could go to the Super Bowl this year. And if you really look at the NFC is lacking in immense quality. Obviously, the Rams won the Super Bowl last year, won the Super Bowl, have not showcased that. And, of course, Guns Picks knows this very well. Anthony cuts out for a second. And we do thank you for joining us on Sharky Waters Nation. I worked a lot of stuff riding when we're down the water. But it's very hard in professional football to back up a title run with another title run. It's the physicality, it's the emotion of it. It's the fact you're playing frustrating games in January. The offseason is all riffraff. You're traveling around. Everybody's, really giving you your flowers. It's hard to really back that up, which is a testament to this particular unit I'm wearing on my head here for really backing up success with success for 20-plus years. But staying course here, if you go through San Francisco, they've already had 2 out-of-division road games, and they are 0-2 ATS. As Anthony mentioned, in the first game of the year at Chicago, in a monsoon, inexplicably. Can't really help that. Trey Lance, game 1, and obviously that was about it for him in the campaign. But The game at Denver, also an absolutely lackluster 11-10 total. 2 unders. I couldn't talk about the total. And as you mentioned, Matt Rule, essentially a lame duck coach. Definitely not a leader, man, particularly the professional side of football. I think he serves himself better going back to college, and I think he probably will. Reminds me a little bit of Chip Kelly. And Chip Kelly obviously getting back to UCLA is a juggernaut again. Matt Rule, I think go back to college, find your comfort zone, and that's what it is. So I like these players. Nothing official for me on these games. Going to 1 o'clock slate, 1 p.m. CBS, MetLife Stadium. New York Jets come home here. Zach Wilson's first home start of the year. Zach Wilson, we don't know what to make of this kid. Obviously, BYU, number 1 pick, has a lot of upside, not a lot of experience. Dolphins, speaking of experience, have owned the Jets. Won 9 out of the last 10, 4 in a row. Quadruple revenge game, short line, guns picks. Official play, Miami on the road at 3.5. Talk to me.
Yeah, I think it's at 3.5 right now. I still like this one up to 7, in my opinion. I think this is a touchdown or more game for the Miami Dolphins. I got him at -3. That's my official. But look at Miami on this one. They're coming off a tough Thursday night football loss. A lot of dramatics, a lot of emotion going into that game, especially looking at the Tua injury. Scary moment for the team overall. But they lost 27-15, but actually you break down the stats, it was 378 total yards of offense, while holding Cincinnati to 371. So they're actually +7 net yards for that game. But the turnovers kind of predicated what the outcome of the game was, and plus the high emotions of losing their starting quarterback in Tua. So now look at the Jets. They're coming off a good road win versus Pittsburgh, 24-20, +51 net yard average, and a +2 turnover ratio. They Pickett 3 picks in that game. And now you got what I'm basically predicating this pick on is a pure fade of the New York Jets at home versus how they play on the road. This team is more of a road team, in my opinion, than a home team. That was proven when they went home after a win against they played the Bengals, and the Bengals beat them up on a bounce back. I see it in the same sense here with Miami. Now you have the quarterback situation there. Zach Wilson took over last week for the Jets. Actually, you checked his stats out. They were not good at all. 50% pass completion rate, 1 touchdown, 2 INTs. Now you have Teddy Bridgewater stepped into the game. He stepped in perfectly last week, in my opinion. He had 1 bad pick, of course, the one that pretty much cost the game. But he had 193 yards passing, 7.7 yards per attempt in the replacement of Tua. Now, Jets 1-6 against the spread off a straight-off win. Miami 7-1-1 in the last 9 meetings versus the New York Jets. Now you have Miami as a road favorite off a primetime loss with extra rest versus a divisional opponent off a road win. I think Miami comes here, bounce back special. I know there's injuries in the wide receiver core that we have to be concerned about, especially with Jalen Waddle. But I think there's going to be a bounce back from Miami. And you know what? It's Teddy covers. He's back. And I'm going to be riding with him. Miami -3 as my play.
Yeah, and again, I think we had discussed this in the Circa competition. A couple of our guys, great, you want to take this play. He's a Jets fan, and I think he's got a good angle here. My only fear here is the situational shift from out of division home games, losses, and non-covers against Cincinnati and Baltimore versus a Miami team. And Teddy covers, obviously, his cover rate, that's why he has the nickname, has been impeccable in his career. At some point that might change, but Guns Picks, best of luck, and let's move on. We're going to Ohio, and Odds Fellow has an official. The Chargers here coming out of road back-to-back off a cover, albeit close down the stretch last week in Houston. Browns a revenge game, did lose last year with Baker Mayfield and a different group, 47-42. Crazy Big 12 style shootout on the West Coast. They come here 2-2 in the campaign. Really gave away 2 games. Could very well be 4-0. The Odds Fellow. Talk to me.
Yeah, interesting, because you didn't know what you were going to get from this Cleveland team at the start of the year when the suspension comes down and Jacoby Brissett takes the helm. I think a lot of people jump to, take team total unders, fade the Browns early on. But what they don't realize is how talented this roster is from top to bottom. And that's the reason I think, along with some decent play from Jacoby, he's not going to kill you. He's not going to maybe win it for you. And that's why they're sitting here at 2-2, but with a chance to go 4-0. And I think this is just a good situational spot. Chargers still a little bit banged up. I did back Herbert last week. Luckily got it done. Gunzo's Mia Viva Chug, just saying. But they almost gave that one away right? They almost gave that one away against the Houston Texans there with the cover. I think at one point the Texans were within 3 points, and we got a late touchdown to luckily get it over there when they were up 21-7 or 28-7 at halftime. So going on the road here to a much tougher environment, place to play in the Cleveland Dog Pound, I think those fans are going to show out. Really what I'm keying in on here is the matchup statistically, the DVOA ratings. What hurt Cleveland last week was their inability to stop the run. Well, luckily, in comes a Cleveland Chargers offense, which just isn't as good offensively running the ball. They come in as the 30th ranked team offensively rushing the ball DVOA wise. So, I think Cleveland here is a good matchup, good situational spot. I think they'll be able to get the stops, hopefully put some pressure on Herbert. Big X factor, Myles Garrett, 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever it is after that car that he got himself into, back in the lineup. So I think Myles is the spark plug they need, and I think the Browns show out from top to bottom. So I don't mind the short line here. I think they're trying to figure out what to do, how to grade this team with a lot of the inconsistency. But I think coming off that loss against Atlanta, defense getting a little bit healthier, and a matchup that I think plays favorably to them, I love Cleveland in this spot.
Yeah. Picks, any comments on this one, or should we keep it moving?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at that one too. It wasn't an official play for me because of I don't know. It seems like every time I'm on the Browns, they're always like, they kind of fall flat on their face, and seeing how this team is played a little bit more coin flippy in my opinion. But Oddsfella makes some great points. You basically got a high octane rush team versus a team that really sucks and can't stop the run. And I still question it with the Chargers. How healthy is Herbert? I mean, how healthy is his team altogether? I'm not sure if Allen's going to be playing at all in this one. I don't think he is. I know that he's been dealing with a lingering hamstring injury, and him being out of the lineup has really affected that team as well. So it's one of those spots that I couldn't really put my money to. I couldn't get to the window to it. And, best of luck to Oddsfeld, though. But I think if I had to take a play, gun to my head, I'd probably take Cleveland.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify. I was on the show midweek wearing a Cleveland hat. I'm not on this game officially. It was my initial lean. I went through it a little deeper. The one thing that's keeping me off the game, because I suggested they should be 4-0, but then I started to go through their strength of schedule. And their strength of schedule is unimpressive. They haven't really played any playoff caliber teams yet. That was really where I stood off this game. So I'm not on this officially. I apologize for wearing a hat, but again, people know better than to take plays because I'm wearing a hat. So speaking of wearing a hat for an official play, we're switching it up here, and the buy hat is engaged. And we are going to Washington, D.C. We're going to Landover, Maryland, FedEx Field. We're taking the Commanders at +1.5. A lot going on here. You have to go through the schedule. Commanders come in here on an L3. Really lackluster football. How lackluster was it last week? This is a team that lost the Dallas Cowboys on the road 25-10, outgained them, more time of possession, and somehow we don't know how corrupt or absolutely morally centered the league is, but 136 penalty yards, which propped up a now 3-0 ATS, Cooper Rush, Dallas Cowboys. The team comes back here on this L3 to where they did find success in week 1 within the same division. Jacksonville Jaguars within the AFC South came in there and did lose the game 28-22. Washington came out early and smacked them, gave it back in the middle of the game, and then pushed late to cover and win. And I think really what you have to look at here is what I talked about last week, reclassifying the schedule for Washington. When we looked at the schedule going back to preseason, we did not think this was a playoff caliber schedule, okay? At this point, it's safe to say Jacksonville is far better than people think. Detroit is far better than people think. Philadelphia might be the class of the NFC. People did not see that coming. And Dallas, obviously, Cooper Rush, total change-up, better than people think. So this 1-3 is not nearly as bad as people are talking about. You go to the other side of this game. Titans get a bit of a sandwich environment. Just beat the Colts last week. Road, back-to-back. Bye next week. Then they get the Colts again in the division. And one of their most lackluster performances of the season was in week 1. We had it correctly. We had the Giants +5.5 on the road. I think it's all time in terms of weighting. When you're -5.5 at home and you go on the road, you lay 2.5. Of course, the Giants and Washington are not the same team, but within the same division, it's similar weighting. This game is graded exactly how books had Tennessee graded against the Giants at home. and you saw what happened. We think Washington wins this game. It's going to be tight, but I think Washington wins this game today. And it's one unit, and it is an official play. Anthony, any comment on this?
No, full alignment there. We dropped this one in the contest, and then I am on it officially too. You can shop around and get some different lines here. I've seen it as low as a pick, as high as 1 or 1.5. So depending on what you want to do, check money lines there, check the one. You can get a little bit creative and maybe just play the number in terms of the VIG. Washington 1-3 against the spread, back against the wall. We talked about this a little bit with Carolina. The big difference here is that I actually surprisingly trust Carson Wentz and Ron Rivera a little bit more than I do the Baker Mayfield Ron Rivera combo, and it's a better match, much more favorable matchup. Carolina against San Francisco. And here you have Washington against Tennessee, a team that I was, buy low on the, coming in, I think is just trending in the wrong direction. DVOA, not a ton separates these two teams. So I like Washington at home in this spot to get it done as well.
Yeah, and moving forward, I know Gunn has nothing on this one. We're going to go to the New Orleans Superdome. New Orleans Saints come back here off a really lackluster performance overseas, and they do catch the Seahawks in an environment I don't think we would foreseen coming into the season. Road, back-to-back out of the division, an outright win as an underdog. Of course, that was against an over-adjusted Detroit Lions line last week, 48-45. Last year, these teams played Jameis Winston on the road, 13-10, a dud. 45 number here. I think you're going to see more points and Guns picks. Saints, an official.
Yeah, I'm going to be rolling with the Saints here on a bounce back -5. Let me tell you why. I see there's 37 people watching on YouTube and over 200 on Twitter, but please do me a favor. Hit the old thumb up and like this, and also subscribe to the Dad Bots YouTube channel because we give this content out for free, and we just want to give it out to the people, and that's how it gets out to the people. So let me talk about the Saints here for a second. Off a tough loss in London. They lost by a missed field goal at the end of the game, 28-25, where I thought they played a decent game. And if you actually go into their stats as far as their they've lost 3 straight since their week 1 road win versus Atlanta, but they're plus 48 net yards over Tampa, plus 133 net yards over Carolina in week 3. Now you have Seattle. They're coming off a 3-point win versus Detroit in probably the most defenseless game in America last week, 48-45, 555 yards of total offense, but they gave up 520 in the process. The red zone was basically playing that game all the way through on a 1 o'clock. Now you got to look at the Saints. What is their problem? If you look, it's their turnovers. Their -2 turnover ratio on average this season, not just a game. On average, they're -2. They've completely had problems turning over the ball. A lot of that predicated on Jameis Winston, who's not going to be playing in this game. It's going to be Andy Dalton from everything that I've read. He's still Jameis is still dealing with a neck injury. And you actually look at his stats last week, and I was kind of impressed. 20 for 28 passing, 71.4% pass completion rate, 1 touchdown, 0 INTs. That's key right there. Now you have the Saints that played back-to-back road games versus bad defenses. That's kind of key here. So they had to play Atlanta, they had to play Detroit. So, but when they play good defenses, this team tends to struggle. Now, look who they played. They played San Francisco. They had -157 net yard average and a 27-7 loss. -180 net yards versus their Denver on Monday night at home, where they actually got the win. Probably shouldn't have got the win, but if it was bad management on the Denver side. But the line tells me a story here. I mean, it's basically you have the Saints defense, who is really good. They're going against the Saints offense that's shown struggles versus good defenses. You have Dalton that can take care of the ball, which is a crucial thing for the turnover ratio standpoint. I think this is a bounce back spot for the Saints. You see them at -5. That should tell you something here. And I think, honestly, Seattle is going to be a public dog today. And public dogs have fleas. And if you want to get down to it, it's a 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time game. So there may be some biological clock going on there. It's going to feel like a 9 a.m. game to them. I don't know if they stayed on the East Coast this whole week. I didn't look that far into it. Granted, they did play Detroit last week. But I think this is a bounce back spot for Saints coming off the London game. Give me the Saints -5 as a play.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a great point. That's a snapshot to sports betting in general, gambling in general, is that a lot of people autopilot favorites because they just have a hard time foreseeing an underdog winning. But when the other side becomes the obvious and people don't want to lay points with a supposedly bad team, that's what Gunn said. Public dogs have fleas. And I believe Jay Money is all over this as well. This is a good look. I'm not on it. I think points are more abundant in this game rather than the aforementioned 13-10 outcome in Seattle last year. Anthony, any comments on this one?
Just similar, I think, for me, not an official, but one that I'm going to be watching in-game closely, especially if they get off to a slow start, because I do believe in the Saints team long-term for the season. I think they're a buy, especially as you get into some games and they may be graded a little bit lower. You know, Jameis getting healthy is going to be a big thing for them, but Andy Dalton at the helm right now with, again, like I mentioned on Cleveland, a very deep roster from top to bottom, and that matters, right, with the rest of the squads here in the NFL, and the Saints is one of those teams, one of those organizations. So, definitely alignment there, not an official. I am going to jump off and let you gentlemen break down the rest of the slate, but it was a pleasure being on. I do have one more Sunday night official, but I'll let Shark handle that because there's full alignment there from Shark and Odds. So enjoy, guys. Enjoy this Sunday cash, and follow me on Twitter. We'll get some more picks out there today. Cheers all.
Taking a breath as 32 minutes in here is flying by. We love to do it. We appreciate you guys tuning in as always. We have probably another 20 minutes. We're going to go through the rest of the card. Multiple officials dropping, and we will go directly to my next official play, one that I've not discussed. I've been looking at all week, and we're waiting for it. And we're going to drop it right now for those of you guys tuning in live, Sharky Waters Nation. 9 words of let's go. Ride the wave or get out of the water. We're going down south, and we're going to North Florida. And we're taking Jacksonville -7-1 unit. And when I first started looking at this game, this is the game that I thought I wouldn't want anything to do with. And then I started really going through it, and I saw a lot of angles to both sides of this game that really made it a buy environment for me. I'm looking at Jacksonville, and as I mentioned when I was capping the other game before, I think you got to really reclassify Jacksonville very quickly as to their quality this season. But you really go back to last year as a starting point for this. In Trevor Lawrence's first professional game, Urban Meyer was the coach. And Jacksonville went into Houston and got absolutely demolished, 37-21. Then they came back later at this point in the season to get to this point of 3-14 on the season. Houston came into Jacksonville last year and hammered them 30-16. So it's a double revenge game, and you get a great line number. Jacksonville was like -3 on the road, came up to 6 at home, which was stock neutrality. Now off 2 demolition losses, 2 double-digit losses, 2 double touchdown losses, it comes up to 7. If you look at what Jacksonville did in week 2 against the Colts in the division, it was their best performance of the year. And that might not even be giving full credential to their performance on the West Coast at the Chargers. But nonetheless, 24-0 blowout of the Colts at home. You have to go to the other side of this game and look at Houston. Houston is purely trending downward in their ATS efficiency. We've discussed this numerous times on this broadcast. The Falcons, the Lions, and the Texans at one point in this campaign were undefeated ATS. And these are projected to be non-playoff teams, 3 of the worst teams in the sport. That is an unsustainable heater. And when you really start to go through this, it seems that the Texans are trending downward aggressively. Go to week 1, home cover in the division, a tie against the Colts. People just watch the Colts play on Thursday Night Football. People are pretty aware of how poor the Colts are offensively this season. Then they went to Denver and covered against Denver. You just saw Denver, also terrible. So you get 2 covers against the Colts and Denver. Then you get a non-cover at Chicago. Chicago is graded as one of the worst teams in the league, and Houston did not cover at Chicago. And they came home last week, got the doors cleaned up by the Chargers, tried to push back, did not get there. You get another revenge game. You get a line number. You get a Houston team that's way too hot situationally against bad opponents. And you get Jacksonville. Honestly, very impressive stuff here. Blowout win against the Colts. Should have covered last week against the Eagles. Come home ready to fucking go. North Florida, stand up. Jacksonville, -7. Guns picks. Next play. We're going 4 o'clock. We're going to LA. SoFi Stadium. LA Rams. Come home off a loss to the Niners in the division. They catch the 3-0 Dallas Cowboys. Cooper Rush and the boys coming in here. I always love putting out these plays. 2 reasons. 1, as you mentioned, the public loves a sexy dog. And 2, Cowboy Nation is a big-time nation. Whenever I think the Cowboys, I hear from it from across the globe. And it's not so much handicapping, it's fandom. That all being said, Gus picks official.
Yeah, I'm on the Rams here. Listen, Rams coming off a tough loss on Monday Night Football prime time, 24-9 Monday night, minus 70 net yards, -2 turnover ratio in that game. But you have to look. The 49ers just own the Rams. It's a regular season thing for them. I think that's like 6 straight that they've covered against the Rams here. So I don't look at that. I take that with a grain of salt and I move forward. But I love playing on a team off a loss in prime time and then taking them in this spot. Now you look at the Dallas Cowboys here, off 3 straight wins, but 2 of those wins came from divisional opponents, a weak division, in my opinion, in the NFC East, other than a couple teams, New York Giants and Washington. Now, Shark made the point. A bunch of penalty yards in that game kind of set the tone for what the outcome of that game was overall. I mean, Washington, they had minus 18 net yard. Versus Washington last week, they had a minus 18 net yard average in that game. So that kind of tells you that game should have been a lot closer than it is, and it was more predicated on the penalty yards than it was on the actual physical yards themselves. Now you have the Rams, back-to-back road divisional games, losing in the net yards in both of those contests. Now they return home. So I think this is going to be a little bit more of a highly motivated spot after kind of playing lackluster in prime time, for that matter. And you see him sitting here at -5. The line tells the story here. Home team is 7-2 against the spread in the last 9 meetings versus these teams. And it's also could be, if you look ahead spots, I mean, sometimes they can kind of hit in the pros. They hit a little bit harder in college football, but they got to play the Eagles on the road, a very important divisional game. And when you look at the Rams, they got nothing to look ahead to, because they're going into their bye week next week. So I think they're going to want to try to show out here. Play a pure game, and the line is telling the story. Listen, Dallas is 3-1 straight up and against the spread, sitting as a 5-point road dog, where they're going against an opponent that is 2-2 straight up, 1-3 against the spread. So this is one of those situations that you're going to have another public dog. Public dogs have fleas. I'm going to take the LA Rams here -5, and I think it's going to be a get right spot before their bye week.
Letting the energy build as we get the buy hat engaged. The first time on the channel, an opportunity to dominate. And full on with the gun. Of course, I posted a video on this midweek, and I appreciate you guys interacting with that. Some of the best quality we can find, hopefully. And just jumping off of what Gunn said, you really have to look at the Rams, and you have to just look at what's going on their schedule. 2 losses to Buffalo and San Francisco. I made the comment before, but we don't know who's going to go to the Super Bowl this year. It's open season. The league has a ton of parity. It's very possible Buffalo and San Francisco end up being the Super Bowl teams. And we look back in March and we say, wow, the Rams were 2-2. They were 1-3 ATS through 4 weeks. But you know what? They played the best teams in the sport. And now you really get an opportunity to fade the Dallas Cowboys and Cooper Rush, which, in my opinion, but again, I don't think it's an opinion. You have to really look at the psychology of the previous 3 covers and the teams they were playing. They caught the Cincinnati Bengals in week 2 at home. It was Cooper Rush's first. Cincinnati was still really kind of just sleepwalking through the season off a Super Bowl run. Cincinnati was unmotivated, unfocused, and did not have to face Dak Prescott. They played an awful game. They were down the whole game. They tried to make a push late, ended up losing the game outright, 2017. Then Monday night, September 26th, Monday Night Football, we had the Giants. Giants are up 13-6 in the third quarter and just let themselves get run over the last 12 to 14 minutes of the game. And you look at that point in time, the Giants were 2-0 straight up and 2-0 ATS. And the Cowboys historically owned Giants in a divisional game. The Giants just purely could not sustain success. They go back to last week, same thing. Washington, divisional opponent, and the game was just very much a statistical outlier. The penalty yardage really swayed that game. Carson Wentz made a few mistakes. Carson Wentz was not traveling particularly well. He's a better home quarterback. And a 15-point win, given the yardage distribution, is the definition of an anomaly. You're looking at a lot of stuff here. Rams need the motivation. It's tough travel for Dallas, as Guns mentioned. You get division, road on the West Coast, out of the division. You come right back home for Philly, which is a huge high against a very, very upstart Philadelphia team. 1 unit official, LA Rams, -5. Going back to the 1 o'clock slate, we're going to go through a couple games. We don't have officials on, but we do have leads. Tom Brady and the boys come back to Raymond James Stadium, Tampa, Florida, off really what most people would consider a very lackluster start to the season. They have a significant inability to score the football. Of course, they've had personnel issues. Their center was injured, I believe, in training camp, which, of course, is extremely disruptive. They're still trying to integrate receivers. Mike Evans was suspended for a game. Julio Jones in and out of the lineup. Godwin's been in and out. Falcons come in here. Guns, I've been talking about it all year. So have you. Now 4-0 ATS. How long can this sustain itself? What do you think about this game?
Listen, when you look at the line, that should just tell you the story here. It just screams Tampa blowout. I mean, I think it opened at 8.5. Now it's steamed up to 10, and it may still keep rising all the way up to kickoff. This is one of those spots where you're basically playing on a team that went lackluster and sucked in prime time. And this has got Tom Brady too. I mean, granted, the Tampa Bay offense really hasn't performed well, but you got to understand they're dealing with injuries not only on the offensive line, but they've dealt with a lot of injuries in the wide receiver corps. So they're kind of already, limping into a lot of these situations, a lot of these games, and basically relying on their defense to kind of pick up the slack. Now I think they're going to get a lot healthier for this game. And you got it in a bounce back, a get right spot versus a Falcons team that has been just feisty. They've been staying in games. They've been like competing on high levels. But for my opinion, I think this is one of those spots that every time you see Atlanta playing at Tampa, and I think we've seen it a bunch of times, it's one of those situations that you always see Atlanta really not playing their best game, giving up a lot of points. They do get points in the process, so maybe there is a lean there, in my opinion, to the over. But the line here could probably, I would rather just cut this game in half and play first half Tampa and see them kind of come out smoking hot. And then you don't have to worry about the feisty Falcons, maybe backdoor covering this thing. But I think it's a Tampa play or bust, and then I lean towards the over in those two plays.
Yeah, I agree with you. Of course, I talk about this on a very regular basis, but you don't really have to you don't have to be a big fan of the sport to really look at data analysis. And when you see a team that is so far above their window of expectation, which is the Atlanta Falcons at 4-0 ATS, they just are a fade team. I'm not on this week. I do lean Tampa Bay, but I do think ultimately when you look at this calendar, this team's going to really crater ATS, starting with a game against Carolina. They do catch a couple contenders here, back to back, Tampa Bay, then San Francisco, then Cincinnati. But in the beginning of, it is actually October 30th, Carolina Panthers, then Chargers, Panthers, Chicago, Washington, Pittsburgh, New Orleans, Baltimore. They get a lot of spots. They get a lot of teams that they're probably right on the margin with, which is similar to last week against Cleveland. And you saw that last week against Cleveland. They really shouldn't have covered that game. Cleveland dominated the game. Cleveland left a lot of points on the table, some situational turnovers, some 4-and-outs deep, the whole thing. This is going to be a fade team. We're probably going to fade this team 6 consecutive weeks starting on October the 30th. So just a couple comments there, and we will move on. Next game, I should say. We're going to stay 1 o'clock. We're going to briefly discuss the last game on the 1 o'clock slate. NFC North divisional battle. Minnesota Vikings come home off the London game and catch the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears, not great on the road, 0-2 ATS on the road, hammered at the Packers, non-cover at the Giants, road back-to-back. However, the Vikings in this position are potentially sketchy. Vikings last year did get the Bears twice by 8 and 14 points respectively. But you have to go back to how the Vikings played the Lions at home in week 2 or 3, I believe. Very lackluster football. I got nothing on this one. I think this is probably the hardest game on the entire card to cap. Guns picks, any comments?
Yeah, I'm seeing the line here at 7.5. Over and under is 44. This is one of those games that I didn't even go and look at the analysis on it. I just know what the Bears are. Bears are just basically a run team. They can't pass the ball. I don't think they trust Justin Fields to make plays in the air. They trust him with his feet, and they trust the run game. But you're looking at the Vikings coming off they got away with a win in London. Now they got to go travel back to a home game sitting at -7.5. I hate the line. I hate the number. And I think both of these teams are, you never know what you're going to get. I mean, shoot, you can get a backdoor cover on the Bears late, and it could be a 3-point game, or it could be a 10-point game, or win for the Vikings. I just don't know where these two teams are. Very coin flippy teams as far as the against the spread is concerned. No one's running hot here, and it's just a game that I'm going to completely avoid and then just watch for analytical purposes down the road.
Yeah, completely agreed. And I always say office pool free play. Let's get a lean. For me, I honestly don't even have a lean in this game. I mean, this is just a dead out gamble. I have no idea what's going to happen here. Going forward, 25 p.m. We're going to Desert State Farm Stadium, Glendale, Arizona. Eagles come in here 4-0 straight up. Very, very clean ATS. 3-1 campaign off a non-cover. One were special by the Detroit Lions. Cardinals come home here off a road win. This is something we have been saying very, very often with this team. Cardinals come home off a road win, and they do not play very well in their home stadium. I'm not entirely sure why. It started in the middle of last year. The team was 7-0, and then it all changed. They just don't play ball at home. Philadelphia comes in here, as I've said numerous times, and I will say all season, turn the hell up, piss the hell off. Jalen Hurts disrespected just enough in college to turn a very, very solid professional into a pissed off professional. He won't tell you this on interviews. He was on Monday Night Football with Payne and Eli last week. He was very cordial. But in the locker room with his guy, A.J. Brown, this guy wants to take this league and take it by storm. Eagles on the road, obviously a chalk special. I'll give it to the gun and I'll make a couple more comments. Guns, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, it's one of those things. Every time I see Arizona playing at home, I just know that I'm not going to get their best effort here. You can look at this two ways. You got the Eagles. They're running red hot right now, coming off a good home win versus the Jaguars. And now they're going to go onto the road in the West Coast playing 425, which is a primetime spot, premier game, them and the Cowboys and the Rams. But I don't know when the letdown spot is for the Eagles, because the Eagles are really, really a strong team overall altogether. It doesn't matter if they're down a bunch of points. They can still come back and beat you, as you saw against the Jags last week. And you have a Cardinals team, like you said, off a road win. And then they're going back home, and they're sitting here at +5 off that. I mean, it's kind of a telltale story that you're probably going to get your best effort out of the Eagles on the road. And the look-ahead spot for them is Dallas, and they're playing them at home. So maybe it's one of those plays just thinking ahead, maybe one more week. We'll see what the Eagles do in this game. So if they go in there and they blow out the Cardinals, it may be a good play on the Eagles on the road. The Cowboys on the road. But we'll have to look at that once the lines start coming out for that game, and also the outcomes of this game. But right now, I just have no opinion on it. I think the Eagles are a really good team, and I think the Cardinals are a bad home team.
They are.
I mean, the Cardinals can.
Yeah, and it's difficult to figure out. I do think Eagles' first half has some merit here. If you do look at what Arizona has done at home this year, they got absolutely smashed in the first half in Week 1 against Chiefs. And slightly later on, they were down significantly to the Rams as well. And I think Philadelphia last week, obviously coming out really poorly at home against the Jaguars, down 14-0 very quickly at home. We talked about this on a regular basis. Sometimes that immediate reverses. A team looks at themselves in the mirror and says, guys, we're down 14 quick last week. We got to come out more focused. And you are catching Arizona, of course, off their trend the road with. So there's a lot going on there, but I think Eagles' first half is probably the best look of the game. 8:20 p.m., NBC Sports, M&T Bank Stadium, Baltimore, Maryland. Guns picks. We have a lot going on in this game. We have a 2-unit special. Tell me what's going on as I get the buy hat warmed up on the side.
I think we're on the same side on this one. Listen, I like Baltimore on a get-right game. They're playing in prime time in a spot at home, by the way. And from a guy that has been to a Baltimore Sunday night football game and seen them absolutely destroy the team they played, and I'm wearing the hat right now, I'm telling you, this is a team you want to play at night in a primetime spot. Now, coming off that tough road win, home loss last week versus the Buffalo Bills, they had a 20-10 lead at halftime, and they didn't score again. So they just basically let Buffalo come back in there. That is deflating in a way. But I think with the Baltimore team that's well coached, with Harbaugh, I think they're going to come back perfectly in this spot. Now you have Cincinnati off back-to-back wins, including the Thursday night football game that we've already discussed. Baltimore has had their struggles against the passing game. That's kind of been the telltale story of the season. But when you saw them last week, I saw some improvements there. They played a good Bills team that could pass the ball, but they held them to 19 of 36, 201 yards passing. Granted, weather did play a little bit of effect in there, so take that with a grain of salt. But Cincinnati, the offensive line, we've talked about it over and over again. They're still weak. Even the changes they made in the offseason, getting the free agents, they still haven't gelled yet as a unit. Are they getting better? Probably. But I think this is still a team that is going to give up pressure. 10.2% sack rate, 11.1% sack rate on the road that they give up. And then you look at the Baltimore offensive line. They've only allowed 2 sacks at home this season, 3.4% sack rate. So they can hold back the pressure. I just think you're gonna see Baltimore in a spot where they're gonna be they'll be ready to go. They're gonna be smoking. It's a night game. The M&T Stadium will be rocking. It is. I mean, I've been there on Sunday night, and that stadium rocks, especially in the dark. They get the lights going. They'll probably have Ed Reed getting the crowd pumped up. Who knows? Who knows what's going to be at that game? But they always bring out the heat in prime time. Also 5-0 against the spread after a straight up loss. 8-3 against the spread in their last 11 off a loss. So I like Baltimore here, -3 in the get right spot after losing to a really good Buffalo Bills team.
Yeah, and as we said, on a suddenly not so casual 7-point Sunday is October 9, 2022. The buy hat is engaged. And jumping off of what Gunn said, a lot going on here in further detail. I think one thing that's very interesting when you look at this matchup and you start really looking at the Baltimore schedule, Baltimore opened the season with 4 straight games against the AFC East. I don't know why the league is scheduling like this, but they did. And its home losses, 0-2 at home and 0-2 ATS at home, have both been complete, utter melts. Huge leads and just gave it away versus playoff caliber Miami Dolphins, probably the class of the league, the Buffalo Bills. And last week you saw really just a snapshot of the coaches misusing analytics. John Harbaugh could have kicked a field goal to take the lead to go up 23-20. He went for a touchdown out of fear of getting backdoored. And he coined some sort of analytical nonsense. And the flaw in analytical coaching is that these coaches apply long-term trends to one-off spots. And they're not analyzing spot-specific data and evaluation. And we really start to match up. Since Joe Burrow became the quarterback for the Bengals 2 seasons ago, there's 4 consecutive blocks. In Joe Burrow's first season, Baltimore hammered him twice by double digits. Last year, Cincinnati hammered the Ravens by double digits. And I think it's very noteworthy. Last year, the Ravens were number 1 in the AFC. They were 8-3 on the campaign. Lamar Jackson gets hurt, and they lose 6 straight ball games. This is a bye team. This is a pissed-off team. This is a double revenge. This is a line number in the division where line functionality tells you a story all over Baltimore. In the most recent matchup at Cincinnati, 41-21 Cincinnati on a -7.5 Cincinnati. All boxes are checked. Stand the hell up. Baltimore, I see you. Ed Reed might be there. Maybe Ray Rice will be there. Maybe not. Ray Lewis, I should say. Ray Rice probably up in Rutgers right now, hanging the hell out. But that all being said, top play of the day, 2-unit special. Baltimore Ravens at -3.5 now. Not entirely worried about the hook. I think this is probably in the margin of 7 to 10 points or even higher, given the blowout nature of these games. That's the show. It is the Shark. It is the Gun. My official plays, New England -3 at Gillette, hosting the Lions coming up shortly in 2 hours. Pittsburgh, Buffalo over 47. Get it at 45 now. We're expecting a track meet, high pace, not a lot of defense. Kenny Pickett is instilling a college football atmosphere into the game. Washington +1.5. Jacksonville -7. Double revenge game off 2 blowout losses to Houston last year, with Houston trending downward off an ATS heater and situational ATS covers against teams like the Colts and the Broncos. LA Rams -5. Stand the hell up SoFi Stadium against the 3-0 ATS Cooper Rush Cowboys and the nightcap, 8:20 p.m. Buy hat is engaged. Baltimore Ravens -3, 2 units. Odds fellow was on here before. Of course, he's having a hell of a day. I believe he's going out doing something amazing. His official plays outside of our plays: Cleveland +1.5, San Francisco -6.5, San Francisco Carolina under 39.5. The gun, Patriots -3, Pittsburgh Buffalo over 45, Miami on the road at MetLife -3, Saints -5, Ravens -3, and Rams -5. It is Circa Millions 2022, the show. It is Sharky Waters Nation. 9 words, let's go. Ride the wave or get out of the water. Guns picks, a pleasure, a beautiful Sunday afternoon. We appreciate you guys staying with us through the lag. That will be fixed next week. Unfortunately, in 2022, sometimes technology just doesn't work the way we want it. Guns picks, close them out, and let's dominate.
Yeah, again, apologies for the lag on the internet. We'll get that fixed next week. But I want to call out the chat: Brian Alvarez, Pat Spade, Vitalis, Nick, Sam, Shannon. Love the interaction on the chat. Please keep doing that. Also, hit the like button if you haven't done that already. And if you haven't subscribed to the Dad Bods YouTube channel, please do so. We had 30 to 40 plus watching today, even with the lag. So I appreciate you for that. Also, we had over 200 plus on Twitter. So thank you for that. So that I'm going to post the plays once we get off here. I may have a few totals as well, but make sure you check us out every Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be here bringing the heat, bringing the fire, and bringing the plays. And also check us out on Friday, 9 p.m. for the college football show as well, Shark and the Gun. So till next time, we'll see you Friday. Good luck with your bets. Let's win some money. Let's keep dancing. Peace.